Okay, so everyone's very welcome to this evening's webinar about the Donegal County Council Community Climate Action Fund, and we're going to have a presentation now from Fiona Kelly to talk about the various aspects of the fund. So, and I need to share my screen so that Fiona can do that. Now, just give me one moment there. Okay, sharing screen. Now, Fiona, can you see that there?
I can. Thank you. Thanks, Stevie.
Now, as I'm sharing my screen there, I'm not able to like mute people or allow people into the meeting. So I might ask your colleagues Suzanne and Lorraine if they have the other view of Teams there that they continue to let people in. So if you want to kick off there, Fiona, work away. The floor is yours.
Lovely. Okay. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you all for attending this evening's webinar on the Community Climate Action Fund. My name is Fiona Kelly. I'm the Community Climate Action Officer with Donegal County Council, and it's my role to work with community groups throughout Donegal in support of positive community or climate action in support of the Community Climate Action Fund. So in the next slide, just provide the agenda for this evening's webinar. This evening, we're going to just have a quick look at the background to the programme. We'll look at the programme objectives, an overview of the Climate Action Fund, looking at Strand 1, which is building low carbon communities, and Strand 1A, shared island funding. And we'll go through those, both those strands in detail. We'll look at the eligibility criteria for the fund, project themes, and the evaluation. And at the very end of the presentation, we'll go into the online application form just to show you what it looks like and go through just the various sections within the application form. So next slide, please, Stevie. So the background to the Community Climate Action Fund stems from the introduction of the Climate Action and Low Carbon Development Act in 2021. This placed a statutory basis on a national climate objective, which commits to pursue and achieve no later than 2050 the transition to a climate resilient, biodiversity rich, environmentally sustainable and climate neutral economy. And it set targets to achieve that. And these targets are very ambitious and they're legally binding. And those targets were for a 51% in the overall reduction in greenhouse emissions by 2030 and to become climate neutral by 2050. The next slide, please. So that's really where the Community Climate Action Programme stemmed from. In order to support the community groups to achieve those targets, it set objectives for Community Climate Action Programme to support small and large rural and urban communities to take climate action at a local level, with the aims of shaping and building low carbon sustainable communities in a coherent way to contribute to national climate and energy targets. And those targets we just mentioned in the previous slide. So the next slide, please. So under the programme, there were two strands. We're focused on Strand 1 and Strand 1A. Strand 2 is closed. So nationally, under Strand 1, €24 million was allocated nationally to projects that support and empower communities in partnership with their local authority to build low carbon sustainable communities. County Donegal was allocated €699,000 for Strand 1 of this fund. So just shy of 700,000 to support community groups in Donegal. Strand 1A is to support shared island community climate action projects, and €3 million has been allocated under Strand 1A of the Community Climate Action Fund, Shared Island Fund. And Strand 1A has a cross-border focus. And again, we will look more closely at both of those strands in later slides. So next slide, please, Stevie. So we've just broken the Community Climate Action Fund down into eligible projects. The types of projects that would be eligible for funding under this are projects that reduce greenhouse gas emissions, increase the production or use of renewable energy, improve energy efficiency or climate resilience, nature-based projects enhancing biodiversity, supporting the low carbon economy, and providing innovative solutions to climate change. So all of those are the main focus of the types of projects that will be eligible for funding. So we'll just have a look now at Strand 1, which is building low carbon communities. So as we've mentioned, under this strand, Donegal has been allocated €699,000. Communities can access this application form through the Donegal County Council website, and I'll be providing those links later on in the presentation. The opening date for the fund was the 29th of December, and the closing date is the 22nd of March. So there's a 3-month window in which applications can be made, and they must be made within that time frame. So the next slide, please. So the attractive thing about Strand 1 is that there is 100% project funding for vouched expenditure under this strand. The funding is open to community groups for direct climate action projects. And when we talk about that, we're talking about capital expenditure items. So this fund is for delivery of projects. Education and capacity building projects are currently not eligible under this fund. And projects must be delivered within 18 months from the letter of offer. So I've just a note at the bottom of this slide that this is a competitive fund, and we do expect to receive more applications than the value of funding available. And we'll look at the eligibility criteria a little later on. So furthermore, the project must be in line with the aim or the purpose of the fund, which is to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and build sustainable low carbon society. There's only one application per organisation may be submitted to the fund. The costs are for the sole purposes of implementing the project itself, and there is an option to pre-fund projects by 25%. If it's required, and this will be done on a case-by-case basis. Projects are encouraged to cut across several of the themes of the fund and to be included as part of one application. So we look at the themes now as well. So who's eligible to apply for this funding? You must be a not-for-profit organisation located in County Donegal, registered with the PPN or connected with other collectives such as the Wheel, Tidy Towns, and or be a community group with articles of association or constitution. So you need to be able to show that you hold an AGM and that there are approved minutes kept of the meeting. Next slide, please. The groups that are not eligible for funding are private individuals, commercial undertakings, schools, and national community and environmental organisations. The ineligible costs include audits and feasibility studies, staffing and training costs, and operational costs such as travel, banking, and legal costs. So from that, you can see that it's the fund really is dedicated towards the delivery of capital projects. Next slide, please. So there are 3 scales for funding under this fund. There's small, medium, and large scale projects. The small scale projects are up to €20,000, medium scale €21,000 up to €50,000, and large scale projects, which are €50,000 to up to €100,000. So there is substantial funding available to community groups. Now, there are a number of project themes, and ideally projects would involve more than one theme, but it's not a requirement of the fund. but it is something that groups should consider when they're completing an application. So the themes are, we'll go through them in the next slides. Theme 1 is community energy projects. So these projects aim to reduce the climate impact of community buildings by using less energy, utilising renewable energy, and avoiding heat loss. So some examples could be LED lighting upgrades, small community renewable energy projects like solar, hydro and wind, and the retrofitting of community buildings, for example, windows, doors, insulation, heat pumps, to improve the energy efficiency of your buildings. The next theme 2, is sustainable travel. So projects which contribute to emission reductions related to travel are eligible under this theme. So this can include electrical vehicle charging points for communities, improving access to cycleways, cycle parking or racks, bicycle repair hubs, safer active travel routes, and reduction in carbon footprint in services. And at the end of the slide there, I have it's more a note for myself, but you also may be aware within the council we have an active travel team, and it would be good to link in with them to see what active travel projects may be planned within your area. So the next theme we look at is food and food waste. So projects that reduce food waste and promote locally grown, sourced food and promote food security are eligible under this theme. So this can include projects like developing community gardens to promote local food production, allotments, food markets and food banks. The next theme within the fund is under shopping and recycling. So these projects would cover projects like that support the number of recycling facilities in the local community, and initiatives aimed at reducing, reusing and recycling to support the local circular economy. So again, projects like repair hubs, upcycling projects, swap shops, books or musical instruments libraries, water filling stations and the elimination of single-use plastics are some of the projects that could be considered under this theme. Next slide, please. Theme 5 is local climate and environmental action. So we're interested in projects that take a holistic approach to managing the local environment to support climate action and biodiversity. So this can include projects like mini forests, forest schools, dispersed orchards, pollinator projects, and climate resilience projects. And just to say that the projects that we've listed in this evening's webinar are not prescriptive, and you may well have other projects that you have in mind or would like to consider. So these are really just ideas and suggestions under the different themes. So the next slide, please. So this graphic just gives us an example of a community building project. So it's a large-scale project. They've applied for funding of up to 80 to 100,000. They've looked to upgrade or retrofit their community centre with LED lighting and solar PVs. Under the theme of travel, they've installed cycle parking racks and maybe have a sustainable parking place. They've considered food and waste within the community building. They've got garden allotments, community composting on site, and they're segregating waste. Under the theme of shopping and recycling, you could hold a monthly repair cafe, and they've installed water filling stations. And within the grounds, there's a local, there's a mini forest they've created. So really, this is just to give you an idea of the range of projects that could be funded under this fund. The next slide, please. So the evaluation process for the fund, all projects will be evaluated on their own merits against criteria to ascertain those that support the programme objective, again, which is to shape and build low carbon sustainable communities in a coherent way to contribute to national climate and energy targets. So projects should aim to achieve reasonable emission reductions or energy efficiency improvements, build capacity within local communities on climate action and biodiversity, and maximise community gain. The selection criteria will be assessed under a number of headings: relevance and impact to the objectives of the fund, innovation and scalability. Can the fund be scaled up? Does it represent value for money? Is the project achievable? Can it be delivered within the 18-month time window in which the projects need to be completed? Is there a partnership approach? Have you linked with other groups in your area? And are there governance arrangements within your group? So all applications will be reviewed and assessed by an evaluation committee against the selection criteria to determine that the project is suitable for funding. And the application form itself will allow you to input into all of those different areas. But do keep them in mind and make sure to include as much information as possible on those criteria. So following evaluation is the selection of projects, and we may also take account of the variety of different projects across the multiple themes and the geographical distribution of projects. We'll just have to wait to see what projects come in, what scale and size of projects, and the different themes of projects. So this is just an option. Selected projects will then be put forward to the Department for approval, and the Minister for the Department of Environment, Climate and Communications will decide what projects are approved and any specific conditions of funding. So the timelines for the fund was opened late December, and there's a 3-month window for applications. So at the moment, for January, February and March, the application window is live. So this is a time for groups to plan, cost, and to complete and submit the online application form by the closing date of the fund, which is the 22nd of March. For the next 2 months between April and May, there's evaluation and selection of projects that will be put forward to the department by Donegal County Council Evaluation Committee. And in June and July, the evaluation will be done by the Department of the Environment, Climate and Communications, who have the final approval of projects. So you can see from the timelines that there won't be a letter of offer for successful projects until August, and that's the same right across the country for this fund. And once the letter of offers are made, there's an 18-month window then for groups to work on their projects and have them completed. The next slide, please. So my advice is to build the community, sustainable community that you want. I would, I suppose, start by looking within your own community, discuss with your community group to find the best ideas in the community that are eligible under this fund. Discover what is needed the most within your community. Look at what local groups are already doing these projects and who could take the lead on them. Who could you collaborate with? Include as many people as possible in the community and ensure that as many people benefit from your plans. Try to put in an application that covers all the themes and connects them if possible. And contact the Community Climate Action Officer, which is myself, to discuss your project. I'm employed to support and to provide assistance to groups as much as I possibly can, and I'm looking forward to working with groups in the delivery of these projects. So the next slide, please. So we're moving on now to look at Strand 1A of the fund, the Shared Island Fund. So under this Shared Island Community Climate Action Fund, €3 million nationally has been provided by the government's Shared Island Fund to support cross-border and all-island community climate action initiatives. Strand 1A projects will address the same 5 themes as Strand 1 that we've just mentioned, and must have a clear north-south basis with a cross-border partnership approach and impact. Strand 1A applications must be made by a lead organisation in this jurisdiction with at least one partner organisation in Northern Ireland. So Strand 1A applications from County Donegal will be submitted to Donegal County Council using the online application form, which we'll look at a little later. Next slide, please. Strand 1A applications must comprise a cross-border project in partnership with an organisation in Northern Ireland, and the partner organisations must be a not-for-profit organisation, a local authority, or a community or environmental organisation registered in Northern Ireland. At least 50% of awarded funding will be for project delivery in Northern Ireland, and communities may apply for a project under Strand 1, and you may also apply for a separate project under Strand 1A. The evaluation of projects will be similar to the criteria for Strand 1, but there's an additional cross-border partnership criteria included in Strand 1A. So other projects that could be considered under Strand 1A are valuing networks for nature, sustainable farming, just transition, peatland restoration, renewable energy projects, local flood forecasting, and coastal erosion projects. So these are in addition to the Strand 1 projects. So we'll move on to look at the application form itself. So as I've mentioned, it's an online application form. There's only one application per organisation may be submitted. You may leverage with other funding sources, provided it's not for duplicate funding under this fund. So if you have SEAI, Leader on Pobble, Tidy Towns and Village Enhancement funding, you can apply for additional funding with this fund, but it has to be for a different element to what you would have already received funding for under the other funding sources. There's a 25% pre-fund option availability where required, and groups would have to come in contact with myself in relation to that and the requirement for that. And funding is only available for costs incurred after the project selection. So not until the project has actually has received a letter of offer on this funding that the project is eligible, that the costs are eligible for funding. Next slide. So the online application form is broken down into 5 sections, and I'm just going to go through this slide very quickly because we'll go through the actual application form and have a look at what it looks like just after this. So section 1 looks at details of your group or organisation, who you are, what you do, where you're located. Section 2 captures the project details, so your description of the project, costs, procurement details. You can upload quotes, costings, and outline the climate and environmental benefits of the project. Section 3, there's a state aid questionnaire, and this is to determine if the funding is state aid, if it could distort competition and affect trade. There are 3 questions in the application form, and if you answer yes to all 3, you need to just fill in a de minimis state aid declaration. Again, we'll look at that on the form. Section 4 is authorisations and statutory consents. So just to ensure that you have all the correct consents, like planning and ownership of land, like you would with any project. And Section 5 is the final declaration that you can sign, just to ensure that everything is as it should be. And we'll also look at that on the online application form. So there is supporting documentation that's also required. So under the organisation or group's governance arrangements, you could show terms of reference of your group, constitution, AGM minutes. There is a section for charitable status number, tax reference number, PPN, tax clearance number. Under partnerships, if you have any letters of support from other groups that can support your project, you can upload them onto the application here. Under the financial management section, you'll be expected to upload a minimum of 3 quotes for the materials and equipment and goods that you need to deliver your project. And under the consents and permissions, confirmation of ownership of the property of your community building, or a 5-year lease from the date of the letter of offer on the property if it's not within the ownership of your community group. So planning and regulatory permissions, anything like that that's required, will need to be available and ready to submit with your application. The last is the de minimis self-declaration. That's again, if the group answered yes to state aid in the application form, you will have to show what other grant aid you have received, what other state aid you have received under a maximum of €300,000. But we'll look at that actually in the next slide, just to explain what the de minimis state grant aid is. So de minimis aid is small amounts of state aid given to an undertaking that cannot exceed €300,000 over 3 fiscal years. The amount of €300,000 has just increased this year from 200,000 to 300,000. So for groups that may have received state funding on other projects, the de minimis state aid just means that you cannot exceed €300,000 from state bodies over a 3 fiscal year period. And that is to ensure that the project funding doesn't distort competition, so that there's a level playing field and that the state isn't funding where it would have an effect on competition. So the 3 questions in the application form are listed here, and if we'll go through them, I think we'll just move through this slide pretty quickly because I don't think there'll be too many groups that'll be exceeding €300,000 in state aid over 3 fiscal years. But if you do answer yes to all those 3, then you have to make a declaration. So just to let groups know that there is a series of public information sessions planned throughout the month of January, and we'll be visiting all the council buildings listed there: Letterkenny 16th of January, Dunlow on the 18th, Carndonagh Public Service Centre on the 23rd. We'll be in the base in Stranorlar on the 25th of January, and Donegal Town Public Service Centre on the 30th of January. So if there are any groups that would like to come along to those to meet in person and discuss your projects, we'll be available to meet you on those days as well. So that's the end of my presentation. just to leave my contact details there. I think Stevie will be able to circulate this presentation to all the groups, so you'll have my contact details there. And I definitely would like to just say that I would encourage groups to contact me as soon as you have your project ideas in place and formulated, just to make sure that they're meeting the eligibility criteria and to answer any questions that you might have on applying for the fund. So I think from there we'll move on to the next section, which I might just log in here to the application form itself, just to give groups a look at the application so that you're familiar with that.
Thanks, Fiona. So I'll stop sharing my screen if you want to try and share your screen and show us that portal.
Yeah.
And we'll just continue to record this bit.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah. Okay.
Perfect.
So I'll stop sharing now.
Okay, so can everybody see that application? You can. So this application is available through the Donegal County Council website. So if you go into Donegal County Council website, search under Climate Action, it'll bring up this page. And if you click this button, Apply Now, it'll bring you in to our online form. So I'm going to click here onto View Forms, and what you'll see is all these boxes are the strand 1 and strand 1A. Sorry, I've just clicked out of that somehow. Okay, so you can see strand 1 there at the very top. We have an Irish version of the form under strand 1, and there you can see strand 1A and an Irish version of the form there. So I'm going to click in to strand 1 of the application. And what you can see here in this, there's a description of the Community Climate Action Plan Strand 1A, and you can see the 5 sections that we've mentioned, and the eligibility criteria is listed here. So to log in, I'm just going to click this button here. Now it just might take a little while. No, it's coming pretty quickly. So can you all see that screen there with the name of the group or organization?
Yeah,
so
we can see
great.
that, Fiona.
Okay. So this is what the online application form looks like. So each page that you see has one question listed. So question number 1 listed is the name of your group. So in this box down here, you can enter DCC, whatever name of your group you want to enter. And you can move on to the next question by clicking up here. All your responses as you enter in are saved as you go. So we move on to the next, which then brings me to question number 2. And you can see down the left-hand side of your screen the list of questions as they come, as they appear on the sheet. So the role, when you register it, when you log in initially, your name will be entered in. You will have to set up submit your email and set up a password as well on that. And that's why my name is already appeared there. So you can move through the application form quite quickly. The first number of questions are really all about the group's details. So the group address, you can enter your details here, like I have done. Air code. Which of the municipal districts are you located in? So again, if you click on the box there, it'll bring up the different MDs, your phone number. So you can see you can move through the form, quite quickly. It's quite straightforward and easy to use. Your website, the purpose of the grant or group, there's a short description required there to provide the group's aims. Is the group a registered charity? select yes or no. Are you a member of the Donegal PPN? You can click here for more information about joining. We'll bring you into the website of the PPN. But just to demonstrate that the form is quite user-friendly, and if you have any difficulties with any part of the form, I would encourage you to get in contact with me, because this is a new form that we've set up. So if there's any difficulties at all, please let me know, and we'll be able to work on that. So tax clearance number, you enter all those details in there. So the next section of the form then focuses on the project detail, the purposes of the grant. So you can see under this section, under number 19, you can tick box here what type of projects your group is proposing. Does it come in under mini forest, other? You can outline your projects there. There's plenty of space. Your land ownership, to confirm that you're in ownership. Again, there's a click box, yes or no there. And here we have then, I suppose, the eligibility criteria come in, the purpose of your grant, achievability, can it be delivered within the time frames of the fund? What are the climate and environmental benefits of your project? And does it represent value for money? How does your project represent value for money? So we then come into the costings. What are the main project costs? So in the table below, excuse me, it allows you to just show what are the main, what type of projects are you looking, what elements of the projects are you looking to fund? And you can list here all the different projects and the prices. And in the next slide to that, it actually allows you to download your quotations. So for instance, if you received a quotation from a supplier for solar PVs, if you could scan that document into your computer, you can upload your documents here. So that should just come in there. Oh, that document is already. So just by choosing the file, it will upload from there. So we have set up the form to try to make it as easy to use and accessible for groups. So the state aid questionnaire, this one that I was finding hard to describe, but like I mentioned, I think that it's going to be quite easy for groups to answer these questions. Does the funding confer an advantage on one or more undertaking over others? So does the funding give you an economic advantage over other projects within your area? That's the consideration that you have to make when you're answering that question. Does the funding distort or have the potential to support competition within your own local area? You have to consider your project and decide yes or no on that. But the final question is, did we cover all them? Planning, sorry, excuse me, I missed a question there. Number 32 there, does awarding of this funding have the potential to affect trade between EU member states? So it'd be very unlikely that any of the projects that we'd be funding would have that potential to affect trade. So you would more than likely be answering no to that question. And if you answer no to that, then you can move on within the application form. If you answered yes, then you have to sign the de minimis state aid declaration. But like I said, please come to me if you have any queries in relation to this. So the last part, or sorry, the authorizations and statutory consent is the next part of the application. So this is just to ensure that you have ownership of the project and all the consents. And if you have a lease, you can upload it here. It's just to ensure that the funding is spent on a project that will benefit the local community for years to come. So under the declaration, you confirm that the information you've given on the form is correct and you understand the terms and conditions, and you can add your signature in there, and the system will send you an email response for you to authorize that you have submitted this form and that you are okay with it. And at the very end, this box here allows you to submit. You can save and come out of the form, you know, as you like. Once you've accessed the form at the outset, you can work with the form, you know, as needs be. You know, I understand that it's going to take time to get quotations and all the documentation together. So I hope that you will find the form accessible and easy to use, and if there's any difficulties with it, to please get in contact with me. So that's just that part of the presentation, Stevie. So I'll stop sharing it here.
Yep. Thanks very much, Fiona. That the slides are very clear, so thanks for that. So what I'll do now, I'll stop recording so that we can go through some of the questions, and
Perfect.
I'll just do that now. Just give me a moment. I'll stop recording.